Yuzu was a delusional girl whose ultimate life goal was to get a boyfriend who didn't care about her lack of plots. However, everything changed when her mother remarried and she acquired a new hot stepsister who slowly convinced her to take the path of the scissors. After her mother remarried, Yuzu transferred to an all-girls school, and although she tried to maintain a positive mindset about it, she was still overwhelmed when she arrived. This was because she'd believed she'd get a chance to do things teenagers did, like getting a boyfriend. Unfortunately for her, her new school was almost like a nunnery, so all hope she had of falling in love and getting her first kiss went up in flames. As if that wasn't bad enough, she got singled out by the student council. Her offense was that she had her phone with her and was a gyaru, which meant that everything about her looks was against school rules. Yuzu tried explaining that she was new and unaware of their soul-crushing rules, but the vice president wouldn't listen. While she was in the middle of arguing with the shortstop drillhead, Mei, the council president showed up. She calmly told Yuzu to stop acting out and said all students were expected to follow the rules and regulations. She also told her that if she couldn't do that, she could take her fake lashes and tan elsewhere. In response, Yuzu told Mei that she'd rather be a fake than a stuck-up goody two-shoes who couldn't bend the rules for the right reasons. Not surprisingly, Mei ignored her, but she did surprise Yuzu when she began groping and feeling her up. Yuzu was left stunned by her actions and was on the verge of asking if she wanted to get a room, when Mei pulled out her phone from where she'd hidden it. As the president began walking away, she held up the phone and told Yuzu that she expected her to fall in line like a good soldier now that she was in her camp. Later, Yuzu splashed some water on her face to clean her makeup and appease the Ice Queen. While checking her face in the mirror, the frisking incident came back to her mind, and for some reason she began blushing. Just as she tried to convince herself that it meant nothing, her homeroom teacher smacked her head with his clipboard to get her attention. Immediately, Yuzu turned to look at him and discovered he was a walking wet dream. She decided being at that school wasn't so bad after all. The man, Amamiya, told her to get her head out of the clouds and follow him, as they were late for homeroom. Yuzu happily followed and did her introduction when they got to the classroom. However, when she turned and saw Mei looking at her, her happiness evaporated. During the break, Yuzu tried making friends, but her outgoing and bubbly attitude wasn't something her classmates were used to, so they tried so hard not to look at her. Just as it dawned on her that she was an outcast, someone pulled her out of the classroom. The culprit was a girl named Harumi, and she explained to Yuzu that most of the girls at the academy were sheltered wallflowers who grew up following strict rules and had never once challenged authority. According to her, Mei was the worst among the lot because her grandfather owned the school, and she was expected to be prim and proper all the time. When she said Mei was engaged to one of the teachers at the academy, Yuzu was shocked. With the gossip out of the way, Harumi declared that she and Yuzu were friends and asked that they exchange phone numbers. Yuzu was surprised to see that Harumi had her phone, and the girl explained that it was because they didn't know she had it. As she spoke, she put the phone back in its hiding spot, between her melons, making Yuzu painfully aware that she was built like a surfboard. She then told Yuzu where to go to get her phone back. So Yuzu went and got the scolding of a lifetime from Minako, the school's resident old crone. After leaving the ancient relic's office, Yuzu spotted Amamiya walking past and decided to ask him for his contact information. She quickly followed him to the side of the building where he'd gone and was shocked to find him passionately kissing Mei. Immediately she hid and tried to make sense of what she'd seen, but try as she might, nothing came to mind. Peeking around the corner again, she observed the two until Mei looked her dead in the eye, so she panicked and fled. Later, when she got home, she helped her mother move boxes and arrange their apartment since they had just moved there. She asked about her new father, and her mother told her that the man had left on a business trip. Yuzu expressed her disappointment at not being able to see him, but her mother assured her that she would when he returned. A little while later, they went out to buy some groceries, and when they returned, Yuzu learned that she had a stepsister. To her utmost surprise, it was Mei and Yuzu who couldn't help but feel uncomfortable because of what she'd witnessed earlier. During dinner, Yuzu tried to ignore Mei's presence, but when she heard Mei tell her mother that she'd been living alone all this while, she became intrigued. This new information made Yuzu feel bad for her, as it meant she was lonelier than she thought. After dinner, Yuzu went to take a bath, and while she was soaking in the tub, her mind recalled Mei's kiss with their teacher. She couldn't help but wonder if kissing was supposed to be intense, and if it was meant to leave the person feeling hot and bothered. A few minutes later, she returned to the room to find Mei arranging her things, so she tried to strike up a conversation with her. Unfortunately, all her efforts were in vain because Mei ignored her and acted like she didn't exist. Annoyed, Yuzu brought up what she'd witnessed at school, subtly hinting at the fact that Mei was nothing but a pretentious farm tool. The next moment, Mei walked up to her, pushed her onto her futon and kissed her, refusing to stop even though Yuzu struggled against her. Eventually, she got off her and left the room. But Yuzu didn't try to get up as she was still reeling from the shock of what happened. She was also mildly annoyed that she'd lost her first kiss to someone who clearly hated her guts. The following day, the girls went shopping with Yuzu's mother, but Yuzu's mind was not at rest, as she hadn't slept a wink the night before. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't realize she was walking towards a fountain until she started falling. She immediately grabbed Mei to steady herself, but ended up dragging her down with her so they both got wet. When they got home later, Yuzu's mother asked them to go take a bath together, and Yuzu began to feel awkward. She tried to convince herself that it wasn't a big deal, but soon caught herself staring at Mei and admiring her. She immediately scolded herself for thinking such thoughts, and when Mei got in the tub with her, she stood up to leave. However, before she could, Mei pinned her to the wall and licked her neck. Yuzu managed to push her away, and then demanded to know why she'd done that. Mei replied that it was because her eyes were practically begging for it, leaving the Gyaru stunned. The next day, as Yuzu and Harumi got close to the school gates, they saw that the school chairman was standing there. Harumi told Yuzu that she would get in trouble with the man because of her looks, but Yuzu, realizing it was Mei's grandfather, assumed she'd be fine. She told Harumi not to worry, and then confidently approached the old man, addressing him as grandfather. Of course, the man had no idea who she was, and he told her that she was a mannerless waste of spunk. Yuzu was shocked by the man's harsh words and wondered if he hadn't gotten the memo about her mother marrying his son. The man turned to Mei and began scolding her for letting Yuzu disrespect and disgrace the school. Mei apologized, but the old man didn't stop and said if she'd been doing her job, none of that would have happened. Watching Mei get scolded for her mistakes ticked Yuzu off, so she got between them and told the old man off. He responded by telling her never to address him in that manner again, after which he told her that troublemakers like her didn't belong at his school. Hearing him tell her those things shocked Yuzu. However, before she ran off, she ensured that she let him know that he was nothing but a stubborn old fool. Later that day, Yuzu and Harumi snuck into the school premises by jumping over the wall since they couldn't go through the front gates. As they tried to sneak into the building undetected, they saw Amamiya talking on the phone and quickly hid. From their hiding spot, they overheard the man tell the person on the line that he was only staying engaged to Mei because she was his ticket to becoming rich. Harumi found this revelation to be intriguing, as they also learned he had a girlfriend, but Yuzu seemed bummed about it, which was why, after school, she waited for Mei to get home, so they could talk. Yuzu started by apologizing for getting her in trouble with her grandfather, and Mei's response to her apology was that she should get a makeover and stop embarrassing her. Yuzu didn't take her sister's harsh words to heart, and then told her about Amamiya. Surprisingly, Mei was already aware that the man's intentions towards her weren't pure, and when Yuzu realized that she also didn't care, she got angry. She tried confronting Mei about it, but Mei ignored her and walked out of the room. Hours later, as Mei slept, Yuzu found herself drawn to her and didn't stop to think as she moved in to kiss her. If Mei hadn't whimpered and called out to her father, Yuzu wouldn't have realized she was acting like a creep and would have kissed her. The following day, during assembly, Yuzu forcefully took the stage and announced that Amamiya had forced a kiss on a student, shocking everyone. Amamiya immediately tried to pull her off the stage but stopped in his tracks when she announced that she was the chairman's granddaughter. After school, when Yuzu got home, she found her mother sitting at the dinner table crying and asked what the problem was. The woman explained that Mei's grandfather had sent his men to take Mei away, saying she would be living with him. Yuzu immediately realized that her stupid display that morning was the reason Mei got taken away, so she comforted her mother and promised she would find a way to bring Mei back. At school the next day, Yuzu apologized to Mei for getting her taken away, but Mei didn't seem to care about that. She revealed that her grandfather had warned her to stay away from Yuzu because she was a bad plot twist waiting to happen. Yuzu was surprised by this and didn't even try to argue or defend herself when Mei told her never to talk to her again. A week later, Yuzu visited Mei at her grandfather's house to drop off her bag. Mei wasn't too happy to see her, but Yuzu insisted that they had to talk, so she let her into the house. Inside Mei's room, Yuzu asked if she was really never going to return home, and Mei answered yes. Annoyed, Yuzu pointed out that if she were truly happy being there, she wouldn't look so sad. She advised her to break free of all the stupid rules imposed on her and start living for herself. Her continuous rambling annoyed Mei so much that she told her to pipe down, and when she didn't listen, she pushed her onto her bed. The next moment, she straddled Yuzu and ripped her shirt open, as the girl struggled against her. Eventually, Yuzu stopped struggling because Mei's tears dropped on her face, so she sat up and assured her that she was there for her. Her words halted Mei's movements, but before they could have a proper conversation, Mei's grandfather walked in. One look at the girls and he assumed Yuzu was the one at fault, so after complaining about how much of a pain she was in his tushy, he told her she was expelled. That weekend, while Yuzu was out with Harumi, she confided in her and told her everything, except for the part where she locked lips with Mei. She admitted that what worried her the most was the fact that she made things worse for Mei, but Harumi assured her that Mei understood her feelings. At the mention of feelings, it dawned on Yuzu that she had feelings for Mei, and she didn't know what to do about it. Harumi became worried by Yuzu's sudden quietness, but Yuzu assured her that she was fine, even though there were tears in her eyes. The following week, Yuzu got dressed and went to school to see the chairman. She intended to give him a piece of her mind and let him know he was nothing but a tyrannical dictator. However, when she got to his office, she found him lying face down on the floor, suffering from a heart attack. Later, a worried Mei arrived at the hospital to see her grandfather, and the nurse assured her that the old man was doing fine. She said a blonde girl, whom Mei deduced was Yuzu, had brought him in and had refused to leave his side until they promised to call his granddaughter. A little while later, Yuzu awoke in the waiting room after having fallen asleep while waiting for Mei to arrive. She immediately went to the old man's room to check on him, but when she saw Mei sitting there, she tried to dip. Mei quickly called out to her, asking if they could talk, so she agreed and they went to the rooftop. There, they didn't talk for a while, making Yuzu feel uncomfortable and awkward, as she didn't know what to do. Thankfully, Mei broke the silence and told Yuzu that she should start calling her by her first name since they were family. Mei also asked her to tell her mother that she was fine and that she did not have to worry about her well-being. Hearing these words made Yuzu feel relaxed, so she said she'd deliver the message and then left, promising to visit the old man the next day. The following day, as promised, Yuzu visited the old man at the hospital, and to her surprise, he informed her that she was no longer expelled. He said the fact that she saved his life only played a small part in his decision, as it was Mei who managed to convince him. It turned out that she'd spoken to him and made him realize that he was an old-fashioned geezer who needed to change his ways. Hearing that Mei stood up for her made Yuzu happy, and she became happier when she heard the old man tell Mei that it was time for her to start acting on her desires. On their way to school later, Yuzu asked Mei if she'd come back home, and Mei told her that she would, making her happier than before. After school, they returned home together, and Yuzu's mother rushed to hug Mei, welcoming her back home. Later that week, after school, instead of heading home, Yuzu and Harumi visited a cafe, and while Harumi was playing games, Yuzu was reading a girl's love manga. Realizing that the manga was only feeding her delusions, she asked Harumi for tips on how to get closer to Mei as her sister. Harumi told her that she didn't think it would be humanly possible for anyone to bond with Mei because the girl's heart was as untouchable as Gojo. Just then she noticed the manga and took it out of curiosity before Yuzu could stop her. As she flipped through it, Yuzu said she agreed that Mei was an emotionless robot. However, she still wanted to have a relationship with her. Just as she rested her back to think of a solution, Harumi got on top of her and tried to practice the various positions she saw in the manga. When Yuzu finally got home, it was late, and her mother complained about her lateness. She said she'd wanted her home earlier to help set up their new bed, and when Yuzu saw it, she froze. Her mother assumed she was too excited about the bed to speak, but Yuzu's reasons ran along the lines of immorality, and she tried not to let them take over her mind. When it was time for bed, she struggled to sleep, but Mei slept like a baby and didn't even mind their situation. After hours of sleeplessness, Yuzu gave in to her hormone monster and attempted to steal a kiss from Mei, but the girl woke up. Immediately, she tried to come up with an excuse, but Mei ignored her and got up from the bed. She pulled out her futon from the closet and laid it down at the foot of the bed so she could sleep there instead. Feeling a bit emotional, Yuzu asked Mei why she had never kissed her, and Mei told her it was because she'd been bothering her. She then went to sit beside Yuzu and leaned in to kiss her again, but stopped at the last second just so she could tell her that it was the most effective way to shut her up. Realizing that Mei had been toying with her, Yuzu became pissed and called her out for being a terrible person. The next day, Yuzu and Harumi were made to clean the bathroom as punishment for stopping by the cafe after school, instead of heading home. Yuzu was in a pissy mode because of what Mei had done the previous night, and she attempted to take it out on the toilet walls. Meanwhile, Mei and some council members were doing the routine after-school checks when they came across Yuzu's table. Mei dismissed Himeko and Kaio, and after they left, she looked inside Yuzu's bag and took the girl's love manga. When Yuzu and Harumi finished cleaning the bathroom later and returned to class, Yuzu found Mei's note asking her to come to her grandfather's office. Immediately, she rushed over there, believing that Mei wanted to patch things up. But when she arrived and Mei scolded her for having the manga in her possession, she became angry. Without thinking, she pushed Mei onto the table and began kissing her. When she eventually stopped, she started crying and blaming Mei for her confusion, saying that if she hadn't kissed her, she wouldn't be having an identity crisis. She apologized for being a bad sister and then ran off, leaving the stunned Mei in the office. As she ran, she didn't notice Himeko coming up the stairs. And since the girl didn't already like her, she assumed Yuzu had done something to Mei. Yuzu didn't go home that night, as she didn't know how she'd face Mei after her unofficial confession to her. Harumi didn't understand the crisis her friend was going through, but because she was a good friend, she didn't ask questions and let her stay at her place. The next day at school, Himeko came stomping into their classroom with her little legs, demanding that Yuzu come with her. Yuzu didn't want to be put in a position where she'd have to face Mei, so she ran away and refused to stop, even though Himeko chased after her. She kept running like a track star until she heard Himeko asking what she'd discussed with Mei the previous day. Instead of giving her an explanation, she asked that they meet somewhere to talk, and Himeko agreed. After school, Yuzu borrowed some clothes from Harumi and left to speak with Himeko at the cafe they agreed to meet at. The cafe was the swanky kind that Yuzu was unfamiliar with, but she refused to be intimidated and joined Himeko at her table. After placing her order, Yuzu asked Himeko what she wanted to know, and the lolly demanded to know what happened in the chairman's office. Yuzu didn't know how to respond as she wasn't sure what Himeko knew about her relationship with Mei, so she tried to avoid answering. She suggested that Himeko ask Mei about it if she was that interested in poking her nose in her business. Himeko suddenly got angry, hearing Yuzu refer to Mei by her first name and asked what their relationship was. Yuzu answered that they were classmates and directed the question back to the angry girl, to which she answered that they were best friends. She explained that she and Mei had been inseparable as kids and bragged about how they did everything together. However, Mei suddenly changed one day and stopped hanging out with her as much and also stopped telling her things about herself, which was why she knew that if she approached Mei to ask about the incident, Mei wouldn't tell her anything. Curious, Yuzu asked what happened that caused Mei to pull away, and Himeko explained that it all began the day her father first left to buy milk. This revelation made Yuzu recall the night Mei had been crying and calling out to her father in her sleep. She couldn't help but wonder what went wrong with their relationship, and felt bad for Mei because she knew she was hurting. Himeko's question about the previous day's incident soon pulled her back to reality, but Yuzu ignored the question. Instead, she asked Himeko how Mei was doing, and the girl answered that Mei was going through a rough time. She said this to mess with her, but she didn't realize that her words cut deeper than she intended for them to. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, Yuzu got up and left, surprising Himeko, so she ran after her. She kept trying to get Yuzu to tell her what happened in the office, but Yuzu kept ignoring her, as she was too busy wallowing in her sorrows. Just then, Mei walked by, and when Yuzu locked eyes with her, she froze, as she hadn't expected to see her so soon. Himeko caught up to Yuzu at that moment, and when she saw Mei, she tried to draw her attention to herself, but Mei ignored her. She asked Yuzu when she'd return home, and Himeko almost lost her shit when she heard the question. Seeing how confused the girl was, Mei explained that they were stepsisters, shocking the annoying girl beyond expectations. Mei didn't stick around to give her any further explanation, and when Yuzu saw she was leaving, she quickly went after her. When they got home later, Mei brought up what happened in her grandfather's office. She told Yuzu that she didn't have to apologize, as it was her actions that led to what happened, and it would be hypocritical for her to be mad. Yuzu insisted that she had to apologize because what she'd done was inappropriate and somewhat selfish. So Mei suggested they even the score. To do this, she kissed Yuzu, leaving the blonde all hot and bothered, and then lying down to sleep as though she hadn't caused a bomb to go off in Yuzu's mind. The following day, Yuzu woke up earlier than usual, so she could walk to school with Mei now that they had reconciled. On their way to school, they ran into Himeko, who didn't bother hiding her displeasure at seeing Yuzu. As they walked, Yuzu pulled on her hair, which annoyed her and made her complain. Eventually, Yuzu left her alone and went to walk with Mei, much to Himeko's annoyance. The girl was so jealous that she decided there and then that she wouldn't let some flat-chested bimbo take her best friend away. Which was why, after school, she went to see Mei in the student council room to convince her that she was all she needed. Since she'd chosen seduction as her method, she played with Mei's hair, nibbled on her ear, unbuttoned her shirt and ran her hand up her thighs. Mei felt uncomfortable with her actions and tried to talk Himeko out of her plans, but the girl was determined and continued. The following day, Himeko called Yuzu outside to speak with her about Mei. Once they were alone, Himeko revealed that she and Mei had done things, hinting at the fact that they had made out the previous day. Yuzu refused to believe it, but Himeko swore it was true and said she was only telling her because she wanted her to support their love. Of course, this was a lie, as Himeko had already deduced that Yuzu had feelings for Mei and wanted her to back off. After Himeko walked away, Yuzu was left with so many thoughts running through her mind. These thoughts remained even after she got home, so she tried to ask Mei to confirm Himeko's story. In her usual manner, Mei told her that what happened between her and Himeko was none of her business, so Yuzu walked away. Hours later, long after Mei had gone to bed, Yuzu sat wondering if what Himeko said was true, and realized that she was jealous. The next day, Yuzu was on her way to have lunch with Mei when she ran into Himeko, who had the same idea. Both girls refused to back off and let the other have Mei to herself, so they rushed to the student council room. Unfortunately for them, when they got there and started arguing like a pair of bored housewives, Mei kicked them out. Sad and feeling depressed, they went to the cafeteria to sit down while still actively blaming each other for what happened. Harumi soon walked up to their table and pointed out how strange it was to see both of them together. After she joined them at the table, she pulled out some tickets to an amusement park from between her melons and asked Yuzu if she wanted to go with her. Yuzu answered that she'd love to go, but Miss Party Pooper Himeko had to remind them that exams were coming up. She said it wasn't the time for them to be goofing off, but Harumi pretended not to have heard her and offered her one of the tickets. As expected, Himeko declined her offer, so Harumi baited her into changing her mind by saying she'd also invited Mei. Immediately, the two lovesick girls jumped to their feet, surprising Harumi, who was unaware of the feelings they harbored. When she asked if all was well, they retook their seats and tried to act like nothing had happened. Yuzu soon became lost in thought, wondering if it would be a good idea to invite Mei to the park. Just then, Harumi fed Yuzu, causing Himeko to scream and begin saying prudish things. According to her, sharing chopsticks was equivalent to kissing. But before she could say more, Harumi fed her from the same chopsticks, shutting her up completely. However, her words stuck with Yuzu, and she began to imagine herself sharing a chocolate stick with Mei. Realizing that her thoughts were drifting into dangerous waters, she quickly pushed them aside and told the girls that she'd invite Mei to the park. As she picked up her phone to mark the date on her calendar, she noticed that she'd set a reminder to visit her father the next day. As she walked home after school, she decided that she'd ask Mei to go with her so she could introduce her to her father. Upon reaching home, she checked their mailbox and found a letter addressed to Mei from her father. After greeting her mother, she went to tell Mei about the letter, and since the girl was in the bathroom, she offered to open it. Immediately, Mei rushed to open the door and told her not to open the letter, shocking Yuzu. She quickly apologized, promised not to open the letter, and rushed to hide in their room faster than Flash could mess up the timeline. Later, while they lay in bed, Yuzu asked Mei if she'd like to accompany her to visit her father. Mei didn't want to go, but when Yuzu told her that her mother had suggested they go together, she agreed. The next day, Himeko called the Ihara residence to invite Mei out, but their mother answered the phone and informed her that the girls had gone out together. Once she hung up the phone, the little crackhead began cursing Yuzu, saying she would pay for pulling a fast one on her. Poor Yuzu shivered on the train as Himiko said this, and she began wondering if the crazy girl was on the train. Looking around, she noticed a girl who resembled Himiko and panicked. However, when the girl turned around and she saw it wasn't her, she let out a sigh of relief. She then tried to calm herself down and concentrate on Mei, but the universe seemed to have other plans because they almost got separated when more people boarded the train. Fortunately, the plot gods were on Yuzu's side and allowed her to pull Mei back to her in time. As they stood facing each other, Yuzu noticed that Mei's face was flushed and quickly deduced that the girl's ears were sensitive. Taking the initiative to be bold, she licked Mei's ears, making the girl turn a shade darker. When she attempted to do it again, Mei pushed her away and pointed out that she was behaving inappropriately. Unable to contain herself any longer, Yuzu pleaded with her, saying she wanted to be with her. Confused, Mei asked what had gotten into her, so Yuzu explained what Himiko had told her the other day about both of them. After they got off the train, Yuzu could tell that Mei's anger was Super Saiyan level and tried to apologize, but Mei denied it. She told her that she was more disappointed than angry, because she couldn't believe she'd fall for Himiko's stupid lies. She'd shut Himiko down that day, and had given her a good scolding for the way she was behaving, but the girl had twisted the story to suit her cause. As they walked to their destination, Yuzu kept stealing glances at Mei. This was because she badly wanted to kiss and hold Mei, but was afraid that she'd get turned down if she asked for those things. So she settled for asking if they could hold hands. But before Mei could respond, Himiko's car pulled up beside them. When she got out, she began complaining and telling Yuzu that she wouldn't let her get ahead of her. She kept calling Yuzu all sorts of names until Mei spoke up and told her to back off, firmly stating that she was disappointed in her for toying with Yuzu the way that she did. Himiko was left stunned by Mei's words and calmly apologized. But Mei refused to listen and pulled Yuzu away. Soon they arrived at their location, and to Mei's surprise it was a graveyard. So Yuzu explained that her dad had died when she was 3. After paying her respects to her father, Yuzu introduced Mei to him, saying she was her new sister and that she liked her even though she was as grumpy as an ogre. She then got up so they could leave, but Mei surprised her by getting on her knees and also paying her respects. When she was finished, Yuzu tried to say something, but Mei didn't let her, and admitted that she'd never once opened any of the letters her father sent to her. She said it was because she was afraid that her father had written in one of his letters that he'd never return to the academy. According to her, if he never returned, what was left of their relationship would fall apart, and they would never be the same again. Yuzu assured her that such a thing wouldn't happen, and said that if it ever did, she would help her restore it. After her declaration, Yuzu went off alone so that Mei wouldn't see her crying and decided that she'd stop pursuing Mei. She believed that what Mei needed at the moment was a family who cared and supported her, so she was willing to forget her feelings and become her sister full-time. The following week, Yuzu came across Mei and Himeko on the stairs, and it looked like the former was sick. Himeko tried to convince Mei to go to the clinic, but the stubborn girl refused and even snapped at her. The moment she did that, Yuzu came to them and scolded Mei for being unnecessarily rude. Just then, Mei collapsed, causing both girls to panic, but Yuzu recovered quickly and told Himeko to head to their meeting. Himeko tried to refuse, but Yuzu explained that she was the only person Mei would trust to conduct the meeting, so she agreed to go. Yuzu then took Mei to the clinic and stayed with her until she regained consciousness. As expected, Mei tried to get out of bed and go to her meeting, but Yuzu didn't let her. After she calmed down, Yuzu asked why she'd been overworking herself, and Mei told her it was because she wanted to inherit her family's legacy one day. Yuzu pointed out that she was still too young to inherit the legacy when her own father was yet to inherit it himself. Mei agreed but said she'd do everything in her power to keep it safe until her father returned. Sensing that the conversation was over, Yuzu stood up to go get Mei's things, but told her that she'd have to apologize to Himeko later for the mean things she said. The next day, Yuzu checked Mei's temperature, and after confirming that her fever was gone, they left for school. They met Himeko on the way, and Yuzu urged Mei to apologize, so she did, and they reconciled. Later that evening, while Yuzu and Mei were home, Mei's father returned. Mei was shocked to see her father standing before her, but instead of running to him like Yuzu assumed she would, she walked away. Yuzu quickly went after her and forced her to stop, as she began telling her father about how good she was at school. When she mentioned that Mei had been covering for her undisclosed grandfather in his stead, Mei lashed out, telling her to shut up. Yuzu was surprised by her sudden outburst and began questioning her reason for it. But before she could respond, her father spoke up. He firmly told the girls that he would not return to the academy, causing Mei to run into their room and shut the door. Yuzu knocked, hoping she'd open the door and they could talk, but Mei didn't respond, so she gave up. She then accompanied her new father to the living room, where he unwrapped the teddy bear he bought for Mei. Yuzu apologized for making things awkward between him and Mei, but he assured her that her loud mouth wasn't the reason his daughter was mad at him. To cheer her up, he suggested they go shopping for food items, and she happily agreed. On their way back, he asked Yuzu if she liked Mei, and the dumb girl panicked momentarily before her slow brain properly interpreted his words. Still, she nervously answered that she cared for her, and he thanked her for looking out for his daughter. Instead of going home, they stopped to chat, and he decided to confide in Yuzu. He said he couldn't return to the academy because there was still so much of the world he wished to see. According to him, there was no set path for a person to live their life, and they were allowed to change paths if they felt the one they were on was not right. He told Yuzu that he hoped Mei would eventually see things the way he did, and she realized that things were the way they were because Mei was yet to understand her father. When they returned home, Yuzu went to speak with Mei, and after apologizing for what had happened, she tried to convince her to speak with her father. Mei refused and told her it was pointless because the father she once knew and admired was gone. Before he left to see the world, he was a strict and disciplined man who put the academy before everything else, including her. Surprisingly, she hadn't hated him for it, and had yearned to grow up and become like him one day, but one day he suddenly, despite this, she did everything she could to protect the place he loved the most, hoping that he'd one day return and reclaim it. Sadly, he no longer wanted anything to do with the academy, and she felt like she'd lost her purpose in life because of it. When she began sobbing, Yuzu hesitated to comfort her, but Mei took the initiative and kissed her. Yuzu knew she was only using her to distract herself from the pain she was feeling, but still allowed Mei to convince her that they weren't doing anything wrong. However, when Mei unintentionally called her cheap for giving in to her so easily, she reset her brain with a slap that made her stop, and after Yuzu got out from underneath her, she told her to stop toying with her feelings. The following day, during breakfast, Yuzu learned that Mei's father traveled so much because he taught kids from all around the world. He was what one would call a nomadic teacher, never settling down in one place for too long because he felt others needed him. Yuzu was still trying to learn more about him when she heard Mei leave their room, so she rushed to call her. Unfortunately, Mei left before she could say anything, and that left her feeling sad. When she returned to the table, she suggested that their father talk things over with Mei, but her mother told her it would be impossible. She explained that the man was too much of a coward when it came to Mei, because he never knew what to say to her. Their father argued that it wasn't his fault that feelings and emotions were a strange concept to his family, which was understandable given the kind of father he had. He then asked Yuzu to give Mei all the emotional support that she needed, and she told him she'd try her best. When she got to school later, she overheard the students talking about how something was wrong with Mei. It made her feel bad because after hearing what their father said, it became clear that no matter how much she was hurting, Mei wouldn't open up to anyone. Later in the day, while Yuzu was hanging out with Harumi, she got a call from her mother, informing her that Mei's father was leaving that evening. She said she couldn't get across to Mei and asked Yuzu to go see him off at the train station, since she couldn't go herself. Hearing this, Yuzu decided she couldn't let the man leave without making up with his daughter. Harumi sensed the urgency of the situation, so she told Yuzu to get on her bike, and they rode back to school. Yuzu rushed inside to look for Mei when they arrived, and when she couldn't find her, she went to the announcement room. There, she called out to Mei using the PA system, and gave her the most inspirational speech ever. After her speech, Yuzu waited for Mei to come to her, while Himeko scolded her for using the address system for her own needs. The moment Mei showed up, she grabbed her and rushed out of the building to Harumi's waiting bike. Both girls got on the bike, and Yuzu rode as fast as her legs would let her go to the train station. Fortunately, they arrived in the nick of time, but Mei still hesitated to approach her father, so Yuzu held her hand to give her some courage. Finally, she was courageous enough, and she approached her father while Yuzu stayed back to give them some space. A little while later, both girls said goodbye to him as the train pulled out of the station. Once it was gone, Mei told Yuzu that she would inherit the academy because she chose to, and not because of her father. Yuzu was filled with pride at that moment, and she told herself that Mei was finally on the right path for herself. Later at night, both girls sat in their room as Mei read the letters her father had sent to her over the years. Yuzu asked what they had discussed, and Mei told her it was the same thing they had discussed the first time he left home. The only difference was that she finally understood his reason and wasn't hurt by his departure. Suddenly, Yuzu started crying, and when Mei asked why, she explained that they were tears of relief. Mei then moved to wipe her tears, the same moment Yuzu turned, and they ended up in each other's faces. Instead of pulling away, they got caught up in the moment and kissed, giving in to their desires. The kiss was different from the previous ones they'd shared, and once they pulled apart, they knew that something had changed. A few days later, Yuzu had an intense X-rated dream about Mei, and when she woke up, she realized she'd fallen asleep during their study session. Unaware of what she'd been dreaming of, Mei scolded her for slacking off and told her that if she wanted her grandfather to recognize her, she had to place within the top 100. Yuzu didn't try defending herself as her mind kept replaying their kiss over and over again like an ad at an electronics store. Unable to concentrate on the task at hand, Yuzu decided she'd confront Mei about the kiss to see where she stood with her. She wrapped one arm around Mei and calmly whispered her question into her ear, begging her to make things clear to her, so Mei did. Sadly, it wasn't the answer Yuzu wanted, as Mei told her that they couldn't be anything more than sisters. She was so heartbroken after this that she went to the arcade with Harumi after exams and kept lamenting. Harumi assumed her anger was because she'd lost the game, and Yuzu didn't try to correct her. When she mentioned that she would give up, Harumi gave her a pat on the head and encouraged her not to do so. She then drew her attention to the pink-haired girl who was effortlessly winning her game, and told her to try being like the girl. Yuzu took a good look at the gunslinging zombie slayer and immediately recognized her as Mitsuri, her childhood friend. When Mitsuri heard her name, She turned to Yuzu and answered her, saying she'd finally found her. The girls took a break from the game to catch up, and Yuzu introduced Harumi to Matsuri, explaining their relationship. Matsuri then admitted that she'd come there hoping to run into Yuzu because she just got paid and wanted to spend the money with someone. Yuzu was confused by this statement because, as far as she knew, Matsuri was still too young to get a job, so she asked her to explain what she meant. In response to this, Matsuri revealed that she had an OnlyFans account, and Yuzu nearly lost her cool. She scolded her for doing something so reckless, but Matsuri told her to calm her underdeveloped plots down, and explained that none of the things she posted on there were of herself. She said the cultured fools who sent her money just needed something to get off to, and she was happy to provide it for them. She said this so nonchalantly that Yuzu got pissed and dragged her outside to talk to her. Once they were away from the crowd, Yuzu began lecturing her on the dangers of what she was doing, but Matsuri didn't care. She ignored everything Yuzu said, dug through her bag, took out her phone and began fiddling with it. Yuzu tried to get it back, but Matsuri refused to let go of it and kept doing what she was doing until she found a picture Yuzu took with Mei. For some reason her expression changed, and she asked Yuzu if her school was an all-girls school, to which Yuzu answered yes. She then transferred the picture to her phone and asked Yuzu if the rumors about girls kissing were true. Immediately, Yuzu choked on her drink and had to spit it out, so Harumi went to calm her down and suggested that they head home before they got spotted by a teacher on patrol. Pulling herself together, Yuzu grabbed her phone as she walked past Matsuri, but the girl wasn't prepared to let her leave and reminded her that she was yet to finish scolding her. In the end, they went to a karaoke place with Matsuri, and Yuzu sang her heart out like she was a member of Blackpink. When she finished her song, Harumi pulled Yuzu aside to tell her that they had to walk Matsuri to the train station because she didn't trust that the girl would head home if left alone. Just as she was about to step out of the room to go and pay, she got a text from her sister and panicked. She quickly apologized to Yuzu saying she had to leave, but reminded her to do as she'd said. Yuzu promised she would, and asked Matsuri to pack up her things, but the girl ignored her and called the front desk for an extension. She then pulled Yuzu to sit beside her before asking if she had a crush on someone. Yuzu shyly answered that she did, and directed the question back at Matsuri, who answered that Yuzu was her crush. Yuzu was so shocked by her words that she didn't try to fight Matsuri when she pushed her to lie down in the chair and straddled her. She pulled out her phone to show Yuzu the photo she'd sent to herself, and said she was jealous of Mei. Of course Yuzu tried to deny it, but Matsuri was onto her and wouldn't drop the subject. When Yuzu let it slip that they were stepsisters, Matsuri commented on how scandalous the situation was and teased her for it. Matsuri then tried to kiss her, but the sound of Yuzu's phone broke whatever trance Yuzu had fallen into. Yuzu quickly answered the phone and discovered that it was Mei calling from a payphone to ask what stuff she should buy for dinner. After telling her to buy whatever she wanted, Yuzu got off the phone and took a moment to relish the fact that Mei called her before telling Matsuri that they had to go. After walking for a few minutes, they got to a traffic stop, and Matsuri happened to see Mei coming from the other side. Instead of telling Yuzu, she pulled her to the place where Mei could see them properly and loudly declared that she was her only sister before kissing her. Mei was surprised by what she witnessed. However, she kept her cool and continued walking, acting as if she didn't see them. By the time Yuzu pushed Matsuri off her, Mei had walked away, and she had no idea. At home later, while Yuzu was doing the dishes, Mei suddenly spoke up from her chair and asked Yuzu why she'd come home late. Yuzu answered honestly that it was because she'd met someone she hadn't seen in a long time, so they decided to hang out. As soon as she said this, Mei came up behind her and started getting handsy with her. Yuzu's reaction went from shocked to confused, and she insisted that Mei stop what she was doing. Mei backed away, allowing Yuzu to face her and ask if she was in heat because she'd told her that they couldn't do intimate stuff like that again. Mei answered that they were sisters, so there was nothing wrong, confusing Yuzu even more. The following day, Matsuri showed up at Yuzu's school unannounced and invited her out on a date. Yuzu had just agreed, making Matsuri jump for joy when Mei showed up and told Matsuri that she was trespassing. The sly girl walked up to the president, pretending not to have heard what she said, and asked if they could be friends because she'd heard so much about her. Before Mei could respond, Yuzu dragged her outside, but Mei followed them. She took off Matsuri's headphones and told her that the next time she came to their school, she had to get a pass. Matsuri was annoyed that she didn't get the last say-so when she left the school premises. She angrily kicked the sign that was there. Hours later, Yuzu met Matsuri like she promised. But she came along with Mei, much to Matsuri's annoyance. As they walked around the mall visiting various stores, Matsuri ensured that she monopolized Yuzu's attention. However, she was still painfully aware of Mei's presence because Yuzu always stole a glance in the girl's direction. While they were at a souvenir store, Yuzu picked out a gift she wanted to give Mei, and when Matsuri learned of it, she became jealous. However, she hid her feelings and asked Yuzu why she'd brought Mei along on their date when she'd specifically requested she come alone. Yuzu couldn't give her an honest answer, and Matsuri told her she didn't have to, as she understood what it meant to love someone she couldn't have. Yuzu denied it, but Matsuri placed her hand on her chest and told her not to deny the fact that she wanted to grope Mei just like that. Yuzu quickly took her hand back and denied Matsuri's allegations, even though she wanted to do all those things and more. Playing along, Matsuri said if she didn't want to do nasty things with Mei, then she didn't really have feelings for her. She said this so loudly that those in the store turned to look at them weirdly, But that didn't deter the sneaky girl from her mission. She placed her hands around Yuzu's neck and told her that she was willing to make plot with her to prove that she loved her. She swore that she'd been in love with Yuzu for years, but Yuzu couldn't bring herself to look her in the eyes, as she didn't feel the same way. Seeing this reaction, Matsuri was left feeling disappointed. So she told Yuzu she was cruel and ran off. When Yuzu tried going after her, Mei came to meet her, and after hearing what happened, she offered to go with her, but Yuzu refused. She assured her that she could look for Matsuri alone and asked her to wait for her to return. Meanwhile, Matsuri was at the arcade, taking her anger out on a whack-a-mole machine since she could do that to Mei. Two boys peeked at her underwear from behind, thinking she couldn't see them, but she did and called out to them. They tried to yeet, but she convinced them to stay by offering them money to help her do something. Yuzu was still looking everywhere for her, and when she couldn't find her, she called her phone, which she thankfully picked up. She assured Yuzu that she was fine and promised to come back after she beat the game she was playing. Unknown to Yuzu, Matsuri was at the cafe where Mei was, and she approached her, asking her to spare her a few minutes. When Yuzu returned to the cafe, she was surprised to find Mei's table empty, and since Mei didn't have a phone, she began to worry. While she went looking for her, Mei and Matsuri were in the underground parking lot. Matsuri told Mei that she was nothing but a shameless, cultured freak who tricked Yuzu into liking her. She said Mei's good girl acts were just for show, and she used them to draw the unsuspecting Yuzu in. She also said a few more hurtful things, and rounded up by telling Mei to stay away from Yuzu because she was the only sister she had. She grabbed Matsuri by her collar, and before she knew what was happening, she was being kissed by her. After she pulled away, she told her that she'd taken back the kiss she stole from Yuzu the day before. Matsuri was so stunned that she fell on the floor as Mei walked away. However, once Mei was out of earshot, the girl laughed like a crazy person. She said Mei was so gullible to have fallen for her taunts, and then approached the car where the peeping Toms were. It turned out that she'd instructed them to take a photo of Mei hitting her, because her plan all along had been to provoke Mei into hitting her. However, since that didn't work, they got a shot of Mei kissing her instead, and Matsuri happily told herself that things were about to become fun. Back inside the mall, Mei heard her name and Matsuri's name being called over the PA system, so she went to the information desk to meet with Yuzu. The latter was happy to see her, but expressed that she'd been worried sick looking for her. Mei was secretly pleased with this information, but chose not to say anything, and just listened as Yuzu complained about not finding Matsuri. She was still talking about her when Matsuri called and told Yuzu that she'd gone home already. Since there was no reason to stick around, the girls left the mall and discovered that it was snowing. As they walked, they talked about Matsuri, and Yuzu told Mei that she'd met her when she first moved to the city as a kid. They had become fast friends because they were both only children, and Yuzu had always thought of her as a little sister. Just then, they arrived at the train station, and they learned that the train would be delayed because of the snow, so they decided to take the bus. While waiting for the bus, they talked about Matsuri some more, but the conversation soon shifted. This was because Yuzu summoned the courage to ask Mei if they could hold hands, since it was colder than the inside of a chest freezer. Surprisingly, Mei said yes, and as they held hands, Yuzu did her best to contain the joy she was feeling. Mei suddenly spoke up, saying Yuzu's hands were warm and asking if she thought she was twisted because she was always seeking her out. Yuzu answered that if Mei believed herself to be twisted, then she might as well be the human embodiment of the Twister game, since she was also always dying to touch her. Just then, Mei saw the sign which said the last bus had already left, so she called Yuzu's attention to it and suggested they walk home. As they began walking, Yuzu suddenly stopped to tell Mei that she wanted her to join her and her mother for their annual family Christmas party. After asking her to keep her schedule clear, she grabbed her hands and resumed walking, unaware that they were being watched by Matsuri. A few days later, while Yuzu went shopping with Harumi for items to bake a cake for their Christmas party, Mei stayed back in school to finish what she was working on. By the time she was done working, it was already dark, so she went to swap her shoes. While she was at her locker, that annoying brat Matsuri suddenly showed up. She approached Mei and forced her against the lockers as she began running her free hand up and down her thigh. She then showed Mei the picture of them kissing and said she'd brought it as a present since she refused to leave Yuzu alone. Hearing this, Mei pushed Matsuri off her, but the girl just laughed and said she had something for her. That thing was her work phone, which she placed on top of Mei's shoes and told her it contained the details of one of her clients who wanted to meet her. She threatened to share the picture if Mei refused to meet up with the client, so Mei gave in and picked up the phone. However, she told Matsuri that playing mind games wouldn't keep Yuzu by her side, and Matsuri answered that she didn't have to because Yuzu would always be her big sister. Meanwhile, Yuzu was at home trying to make the perfect cake for the party, but she was failing miserably. Her mother offered to help, but she refused her offer, insisting on doing everything alone. By the time Mei returned home, Yuzu's cake was ready and she'd just finished decorating it. She excitedly told Mei about the cake and asked her to let her know if she had any special food requests for the party. Mei told her that she didn't, and explained that she wouldn't attend the party because she had some work to finish at school. Later, Yuzu returned to their room after taking a shower and was relaxing on the bed when Matsuri sent her a text. In her text, she invited Yuzu to go on a date with her on Christmas Day, and Yuzu wondered out loud if the girl was that lonely. Mei heard what she said and told her not to decline Matsuri's invitation, which surprised Yuzu. As Mei left the room, she stopped by the door to tell Yuzu that Matsuri needed her, confusing her even more with how cryptic she was being. The next day, being Christmas Day, Yuzu started walking home, wondering what Mei meant about Matsuri needing her. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Harumi until the girl whacked her with her book bag. Yuzu asked what she'd done to deserve her wrath, and Harumi said it was because she'd failed to wait for her. Yuzu apologized, but Harumi pushed the apology aside to ask why she looked so gloomy when she'd been so excited about the party. Her friend explained that it was because Mei couldn't attend the party, and Harumi sympathized with her. However, she suggested that Yuzu go and help Mei with her work, so she could finish on time, and they could both go home together. Yuzu became excited and was on the way to Mei when Matsuri suddenly showed up and tackled her with a hug. Seeing as they were receiving disapproving stares from the students around, Yuzu dragged Matsuri to the side of the building and asked why she'd come. Matsuri said she'd come because Yuzu had failed to respond to her text about the date. Yuzu attempted to find a way to turn her down, but Matsuri backed her into a corner, so she had no choice but to agree. As they walked away, she felt bad that she couldn't go to Mei, unaware that Mei had already left school to meet with the client. At the cafe they went to, things were going well and Matsuri was on cloud 9 until Yuzu started talking about Mei. Annoyed, Matsuri spitefully revealed that Mei was meeting with one of her clients, but Yuzu didn't believe her. To prove it, she gave Yuzu her phone and told her what number to call to confirm what she'd just told her. She assured that once she'd confirmed that Mei was with the man, she would see that there was nothing special about her. Listening to Matsuri made Yuzu recall what Mei had said the previous night, and she realized why Mei wanted her to meet with Matsuri. The next moment, Yuzu got up and told Matsuri that they were going to find Mei so she could apologize to her. Matsuri didn't want to leave, but Yuzu insisted that she get up because she owed it to Mei, who had only been trying to look out for her. This statement angered Matsuri, and she began complaining, saying she'd won and that Mei couldn't compare to her. She was so loud that the other patrons turned to look at her, but Yuzu didn't care and pulled her towards her. She told Matsuri that human relationships weren't games which people won or lost. After saying this, she grabbed the phone and rushed to find Mei where Matsuri had said she'd be. When she arrived, Mei wasn't there, so she tried calling and was happy when Mei picked up. However, a second later the line went dead. Yuzu began fearing the worst, but when she heard Mei calling her name, she relaxed and turned to face her as she explained that she'd accidentally hung up on her. As soon as she was done, Yuzu threw herself on her and began crying like a baby, so Mei just held her. Later, on the train ride home while Yuzu slept, Matsuri and Mei talked. Well, they tried to be civil towards each other, and Matsuri let her know that she was only tolerating her because of Yuzu. In response, Mei told her that she saw herself in her, explaining that they were similar in a lot of ways, mostly in the way they craved love because they were empty on the inside and needed something to fill the void. In the end, they had a heart-to-heart, and Matsuri deleted the picture of them kissing, seeing as she was prepared to make peace with her. When they got off at the train station, they bid Matsuri goodbye because she had to take another train. Before the crazy girl left, she told Yuzu that Mei also had feelings for her, causing her to blush as she felt she finally had hope. As soon as Matsuri saw this, she clarified that the feelings she was referring to were the sisterly kind, and started laughing at Yuzu's disappointment. When the girls got home later, their mother had already gone to bed, but she left a note saying she'd enjoyed Yuzu's cake. Mei asked Yuzu to serve her a piece of cake, and while she was eating, Yuzu apologized for what happened. She blamed herself for Matsuri's actions, and said her failure to be a good sister was what led to it. When she started crying, Mei asked if her tear ducts were connected to a busted pipe, but Yuzu ignored her jab and hugged her. She then begged her never to put herself in harm's way again, and asked her to come to her if she was ever in a bad situation. Mei was so surprised by her words that she didn't move or respond for a while. When she did eventually move, it was to push Yuzu against the sofa. She then put one of her hands against her chest, asking her to feel how fast her heart was beating. Yuzu was too stunned to speak, but Mei carried on and asked if she was willing to accept her with all her flaws. Feeling a bit awkward and overwhelmed, Yuzu took her hand back and tried to avoid Mei's gaze, but Mei didn't give her breathing space. She said she wanted to show her gratitude to Yuzu for all the help she'd given her, and slowly began unbuttoning her shirt. Once her strip show was over, she leaned into Yuzu and said she was prepared to give her the thing she desired the most. Yuzu was on the verge of giving in to her, but for some reason she stopped at the last second and turned Mei down. Her words were like a bucket of ice water, and once they hit Mei, she quietly got up and left the room. A month later, Yuzu was packing her things for the school trip, when Matsuri came visiting. After Yuzu let her in, Matsuri inquired about Mei's whereabouts, and Yuzu told her that she was off doing some student council work. Matsuri expressed disappointment at this because she'd been hoping to ask Mei to tutor her. Matsuri observed Yuzu for a while, and then asked how things had gone between her and Mei on Christmas Day. Yuzu answered that nothing happened, prompting Matsuri to ask if they had fought, but Yuzu didn't respond. Since she was smart, Matsuri deduced what had happened, so she told Yuzu that she should try using her head for once. She explained that love and romance were tricky and not as easy as books or manga made them out to be. Additionally, she said it didn't matter how much she loved Mei because as long as she didn't consider Mei's feelings, things wouldn't work out. This statement made Yuzu feel worse than she already did, but when Matsuri asked if there was a problem, she said no. The next day at the train station, a girl named Sarah scolded her sister Nina for almost making them late for their school field trip. Nina didn't seem to mind, and told Sarah that it didn't matter where they were as long as they were together. Not surprised, Sarah said Nina ought to be grateful to the person who helped them find their classmates. She described the person as heaven sent, and said it was fate that they met each other in the busy streets of Tokyo. She was still gushing about the person when she suddenly remembered something, and asked Nina if she'd bought the keychain she told her to buy. Nina answered that she'd forgotten, so Sarah said she'd go buy it and promised to return before they were supposed to leave. Meanwhile, a late Yuzu was in the middle of a mad dash from her apartment building to the train station when she called Harumi. Her friend asked where she was, and she told her she was currently attempting to beat Usain Bolt's world record, which surprised her. Before Harumi could ask why she was late, Yuzu asked if Mei was there, and Harumi answered that she'd gotten there a few minutes ago. Her answer made Yuzu sad, but she pushed the feelings aside and pleaded with Harumi to let their teachers know that she would be there soon. Unfortunately, by the time Yuzu arrived at the train station, the train had already left, so she decided to wait for the next one. To pass the time, she went to the souvenir store and happened to run into Sara. Both girls became fast friends, and Sara asked Yuzu for directions to the platform where the train she was supposed to take was. Yuzu informed her that the train had already left, shocking Sara, who had lost track of the time. Thankfully, they were going to the same place, so they boarded the next train and sat together. As they were getting to know each other, Sara told Yuzu about her sister Nina. She said they were twins, but because Nina was taller, more beautiful, and smarter than she was often overlooked. Changing the topic, Sara told Yuzu about the beautiful stranger who assisted her and Nina when they got lost earlier that day. According to her, it was fate that led them to meet, and she believed the girl was her soulmate even though she wasn't sure they would meet each other again. Yuzu was envious of how proudly Sara declared her feelings for this mystery stranger and wondered if she'd ever get to love as freely as that. A few hours later, they arrived in Kyoto, and Yuzu called Harumi to ask for directions to where they were. After she hung up, Nina rejoined Yuzu, and they realized they were heading the same way, so they decided to stick together and try to locate their classmates. Unfortunately, they always arrived at each location late, and after hours of running around, they sat on a bench to take a break. It was during this time that Sara noticed that Yuzu was acting like she was carrying the world on her shoulders. Concerned, she asked Yuzu what the problem was, and Yuzu opened up to her about Mei. She told her about her crush and how their shaky relationship crumbled to pieces on Christmas Day after she turned her down. When she started crying, Sara consoled her and assured her that she would be fine. Later, both girls arrived at the hotel where they were supposed to stay for the duration of their trip, and Sara commented on how everything that had happened that day was a little too coincidental for her liking. Just then, Nina rushed to hug Sarah, and after her dramatic display, Sarah introduced her to Yuzu, who was a bit intimidated by Nina's height. After promising to meet up later, Yuzu left the sisters alone, and as Sarah began fixing up Nina's clothes, Nina noticed Mei approaching them. She quickly called Sarah's attention to her, and the girl was happy to see her savior standing before her. She shyly approached Mei and introduced herself before asking for her name in return. Mei kindly answered Sarah's question, and after confirming that they would be staying at the same hotel, Sarah said she was looking forward to seeing Mei again. After parting ways with the sisters, Mei walked past where Yuzu was getting chewed out by Mineko and Himeko for missing the train. As soon as Yuzu noticed her, she remembered her discussion with Sarah and decided to take matters into her own hands. She ran off while Himeko was speaking and quickly caught up with Mei, asking if they could talk. Mei didn't respond before Himeko showed up and dragged Yuzu away, but Yuzu still called out to her, saying she would come find her later. Meanwhile, Sara and Nina were on their way to their room after Sara got a verbal lashing from their teachers for missing the train, when Nina suddenly stopped. Sara asked what the matter was, and she revealed that she'd lost the keychain Sara had gotten for her. Sara told Nina not to worry about it, but Nina started crying and saying she had to find it. Before Sara could stop her, the girl got up and rushed to search the places they had been for the keychain. During that time, Yuzu and Mei were outside talking, and Yuzu asked Mei why she didn't wake her up that morning. Mei answered that it wasn't her fault that Yuzu slept more than Sleeping Beauty and couldn't wake up on time. Pushing this statement aside, Yuzu brought up what happened on Christmas Day. This prompted Mei to ask Yuzu how she felt about her, and Yuzu admitted that she loved her, but tried covering it up by saying it was like a sister. Nina, who had come looking for her keychain, happened to overhear Yuzu's confession, but kept herself hidden from the girls. Yuzu was about to say something else, but Mei cut her off and told her to forget everything that happened that night. She then walked away, leaving the shocked Yuzu standing there trying to process her words. Nina was also shocked by what she'd witnessed and wondered if it meant that Sara wouldn't have a chance with Mei. However, she suddenly perked up and told herself that she had the perfect plan to help her sister win Mei's affection. The following day, Nina dragged Sara to a shrine because she found out from Himeko that their school would be there. She told Sara that it was her chance to make a move on Mei, but Sara wasn't as optimistic as she was. However, she agreed to go in and offer some prayers. Himeko and Yuzu were already inside the shrine, and they were praying that their relationship with Mei would get better. They spent quite some time praying, and when they were finished, they went to meet Harumi, who complained about how they made her wait. The girls defended themselves, saying that they needed to ensure that their prayers were answered. Just then, Sarah called out to Yuzu, so she left Himiko and Harumi to go speak with her. Sarah excitedly told her that she'd met her crush again the previous night and finally got to know her name. Yuzu expressed her joy for her, but secretly wished she were as bold as Sarah so she could patch things up with Mei. While they were talking, Sarah shared her intention to confess to her crush, shocking Yuzu, who pointed out that it was too soon to do that. Sarah agreed that she was jumping the gun. However, she said she felt it was the right thing to do, and she was willing to take that risk. She then told Yuzu she was going to look for Nina, and promised to tell her the outcome of her confession later. As she walked away, Yuzu couldn't help but feel envious of her, because she believed that if she were half as confident as Sarah, she wouldn't be trying to figure out her feelings. Suddenly it started raining, so everyone sought shelter. And while Harumi and Himiko checked out a charm stall, Yuzu stood in a corner thinking. She admitted that she was lying to herself about how she truly felt, and until she owned up to it, she would never know how Mei felt about her. Her thoughts were soon interrupted by Harumi and Himiko, who came to give her the charms they had bought. According to them, if people shared matching charms, their relationship would become stronger than before. Himiko tried to pretend that she was giving Yuzu the charm because she had an extra one, but Harumi called her a liar and teased her for spending time looking for a charm Yuzu would like. While that was happening, Nina found Mei in another part of the shrine and went to talk to her. She told her that her sister liked her and would like to date her, but Mei politely turned her down, saying she wasn't interested. Nina let out a sad sigh because she'd expected Mei's response, but she refused to back down and told her that she knew what she wanted. Confused, Mei asked what she was talking about, but Nina refused to say anything else and left. A little while later, Sarah came looking for Nina but found Mei instead, so she decided to put her big girl pants on and confess to her. Surprisingly, Mei didn't turn her down and asked if she was willing to give her heart to her, to which Sarah said yes. That night, at the hotel, Yuzu tried to patch things up with Mei and finally confess her feelings, but she was too scared to get the words out. Tired of the cat and mouse game, Mei revealed that someone had confessed to her, and she agreed to date her. Feeling sad, Yuzu tried drowning her feelings in orange juice, since she was still too young to have any booze. She berated herself for letting a baddie like Mei slip through her fingers and wondered who it was that was lucky enough to snatch Mei up. Ultimately, she admitted that she had no right to be jealous because she never confessed her feelings to Mei, and the girl was allowed to date whoever she wanted. Just as she made up her mind to be happy for Mei, Nina popped up out of nowhere. She excitedly told Yuzu that Sarah's crush agreed to date her, and Yuzu expressed genuine happiness for her new friend. Nina was well aware that her sister and Yuzu had feelings for Mei. However, she purposely refused to tell Yuzu. Instead, she made her promise to support Sarah's relationship no matter what happened. After getting this promise from Yuzu, she reminded her that bath time was almost over, so Yuzu excused herself. At the bath, Yuzu ran into Mei, and the two argued because Mei told her that she'd missed bath time and was breaking the rules by being there at that time. Yuzu refused to leave and said she only needed a few minutes before angrily walking away. Inside the bath, she found Sarah fast asleep and woke the girl up, saying that if she kept sleeping there, she'd turn wrinkly. She also teased her about having a girlfriend by pulling on her cheeks, and poor Sarah couldn't do anything to defend herself. When they eventually calmed down, Sarah chose to remain in the bath to keep Yuzu company. Yuzu told her that she was lucky that her crush accepted her confession, and told her that she didn't get the chance to confess because her crush was already dating someone. Sarah was surprised and felt sorry for her. However, she encouraged Yuzu not to give up and said she had to tell her crush how she felt. Yuzu thought about what she said and agreed that there was no harm in confessing, even if she got turned down. Instantly, her mood shifted, and she began playing with Sarah, who complained about being the one getting tossed around. After their bath, Sarah found Yuzu's student ID in the changing room, and when she saw her surname, she quickly made the connection between her and Mei. Meanwhile, Yuzu snuck into Mei's room to speak with her, but Mei refused to talk to her and asked her to leave. Yuzu was still trying to convince her to listen when they heard Himiko coming back, so Mei quickly turned off the lights and pushed Yuzu into her bed to hide her. Himiko came in and assumed Mei was fast asleep, so she decided to go to bed too. Underneath Mei's blanket, she told Yuzu that once Himiko was in dreamland, she wanted her to leave. Yuzu didn't pay attention to what she said, as she was distracted by Mei's scent and the sound of her heartbeat. She soon got carried away and tried to kiss Mei, but Mei stopped her and kicked her out of her room. Despite this, Mei refused to give up, so the next day, after learning from Himiko that Mei had gone to Kyoto Station, she rushed over there. She searched all over but couldn't find Mei anywhere, and just as she was about to give up, she met Nina. Nina asked why she was at the station, and she answered that she'd come looking for her sister. To her surprise, Nina told her that Mei was with Sarah, so she asked how she knew who Mei was, as she'd never introduced the twins to her. Nina simply walked up to her, and after trapping her between the railing and her body, she revealed that Mei was Sarah's new girlfriend. At the same time, Sarah and Mei were at the Kyoto Tower, and Sarah nervously asked Mei if they could share a kiss. Mei took a while to answer, and Sarah was certain she would turn her down, but to her surprise, she said yes. Back at the station, Nina admitted that she'd known all along that the girl Sarah liked was the same girl Yuzu liked. However, she said she had no choice but to help her sister win Mei over, and reminded Yuzu of her promise to support Sarah's relationship. Yuzu told her that she couldn't keep that promise because she had to tell Mei how she felt. As she began walking away, Nina went after her and tried to guilt-trip her into staying away from Mei, but Yuzu was determined not to listen. As a last resort, Nina tackled Yuzu to the floor and said she'd keep her there until Mei and Sarah finished their date. Confused by the girl's behavior, Yuzu asked why she cared so much about her sister's relationship when it had nothing to do with her. Nina had no choice but to admit that she was doing this because she wanted her sister to find happiness. It turned out that Sarah always put the happiness of others before her own, and Nina knew that if Sarah found out about the connection between Yuzu and Mei, she wouldn't think twice about stepping aside. Nina was shedding tears as she said this, and it tugged at Yuzu's heartstrings, but before she could say anything, her phone rang. When she answered it, she discovered that it was Sarah on the line, and she wanted her to come see her. She told Nina what Sarah said, and Nina pleaded with her not to tell Sarah about her connection with Mei, but she told her that she couldn't do that. She said she didn't want to keep secrets from Sarah, as she considered her to be her friend, adding that she was willing to face the consequences of her decision head-on. Realizing that Yuzu wouldn't change her mind, Nina insisted on going with her to meet Sarah, so she could offer her sister some emotional support. When the pair arrived at the tower, they saw only Sarah, so they asked where Mei was, and Sarah explained that she'd asked Mei to give her time to speak with Yuzu. She presented Yuzu's ID to her, and said she'd found out her connection to Mei through it. Yuzu apologized even though she didn't have to, and informed Sarah about her plan to confess to Mei. Surprisingly, Sarah wasn't angry or hurt. She only asked Yuzu if she was sure of her decision, and Yuzu confirmed that she was. Sarah then told Yuzu that in the short time she'd spent with Mei, she learned the kind of person Mei was, and realized that she was similar to Yuzu. She suggested that Yuzu take time to learn more about Mei and vice versa, because that was the only way they would understand each other. After returning Yuzu's ID, she told her that Mei was at the shrine, and asked her not to blow this final chance. Grateful to Sarah for helping her, Yuzu gave her the charm she'd wanted to give to Mei, and said she wished it would bring her happiness. After Yuzu left to get her girl, Nina approached Sarah and asked why she'd stepped aside for Yuzu. Sarah explained that it was because she was fated to come into their lives and act as their fairy godmother. Nina thought her sister was spewing rubbish. However, she was prepared to support her and proved it by hugging her. Elsewhere, Yuzu made her way to the shrine and kept thinking about the situation, since she needed to gather her thoughts before facing Mei. She examined her feelings, wondering why, even though she was in love with Mei, she was still hesitant to admit her feelings. On Christmas Day, Mei had shown her vulnerability by asking if she would accept her for who she was, but Yuzu had panicked and rejected her because she hadn't considered how Mei felt. However, now that she knew that they both felt the same way, she was willing to fight for them and prove to Mei that they could be together. With this at the back of her mind, Yuzu started running, as she was eager to get to Mei. As she ran, she didn't notice Harumi and Himiko watching her from across the street, and both girls wondered where she was going. Himiko then admitted that even though Yuzu was a constant pain in her flat tush, her presence had made her life a little more interesting. Harumi agreed that Yuzu was a ball of sunshine but told Himiko that they had to get going if they wanted to finish their sightseeing. Eventually, Yuzu arrived at the shrine and ran around looking for Mei everywhere she could think of. When she finally found her, she called out to her and asked if they could talk, but Mei said she had nothing to talk to her about. Yuzu insisted that they did and pleaded with Mei to hear her out, but the girl refused. She began walking faster to evade Yuzu, but Yuzu was determined not to let her leave and followed her. Soon Mei started running, so Yuzu did the same, but instead of doing so quietly, she began shouting out the things she wished to tell Mei. She acknowledged that she'd been a coward and a fool for rejecting her, but said she'd done it because she was confused. Still, Mei kept running, so Yuzu decided to play dirty and said she knew that Mei felt the same way about her. Immediately, Mei's steps faltered, allowing Yuzu to tackle her to the ground before she could react. In their position on the ground, Yuzu finally admitted she was in love with Mei and asked Mei to kiss her if she felt the same way. She closed her eyes after saying this, waiting patiently for Mei to make a move. But Mei was too shy to do anything, so she pressed her keychain against Yuzu's lips. Taking this as an admission, Yuzu pushed the bear away and kissed Mei without hesitation. Later, they returned to the station to meet the twins, and Nina took Yuzu elsewhere so that Mei and Sarah could talk. Mei apologized to Sarah for her inability to accept her feelings, and Sarah assured her that she wasn't angry. After talking for a while, they returned to Yuzu and Nina and bid each other farewell, so the twins left to catch their train. As Yuzu and Mei left the station, Mei surprised Yuzu by holding her hand, and even when Yuzu pointed out that they were in public, Mei refused to let go. As they walked to the hotel, Yuzu tried to clarify that they were on the same page by asking for a kiss, which Mei gave her. Eventually, they returned to Tokyo and went back to their normal lives with their friends. And even though they were still learning to understand each other, one thing was clear: Mei and Yuzu were in love. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, let us know by commenting simp. Don't forget to check out the next video.